going to die. Not eventually, not someday when you're old and ready. You are dying right now, in this exact second, while you watch this video. The clock never stops. It doesn't pause for your excuses, your plans, your "next year I'll start." It keeps counting down, whether you're paying attention or not. Here's the part that should scare you. Most people never feel that clock. They live like they've got endless time in the bank, spending decades on things that don't matter, waiting for some perfect moment to finally become who they were meant to be. That moment doesn't come. It was never coming. And one day, usually too late, they realize the waiting itself was the mistake. There's an old man I think about sometimes. Not someone famous, just a man who spent 60 years working a job he hated, telling himself he'd travel later, write that book later, call his brother back later. He was 83 when a doctor sat across from him and said the words that end every excuse a person has ever made. Weeks, not years. He didn't cry about dying. He cried about the life he never got around to living. Every dream he'd been getting to sat in that hospital room with him, untouched, expired. He kept a list once, years earlier, scribbled on the back of an old receipt, places to see, people to forgive, a business he wanted to start before he got too old for risk. That receipt was still in his wallet when he died. Nobody found it until after the funeral. That story isn't rare. It's the most common story in the world. And if you're honest with yourself this morning, some part of you is already living it. Some part of you is postponing the version of yourself you actually want to become, waiting for motivation, waiting for the right time, waiting for permission nobody is going to give you. This isn't going to be one of those videos that makes you feel warm for 10 minutes and changes nothing. If you want comfort, close this now. But if you're done lying to yourself, if you're ready to hear the truths that truly build a man instead of soothing him, keep watching. Because what you're about to hear isn't gentle, it's brutal. It's the kind of truth the old Stoics built their entire lives around, the kind that doesn't care about your feelings, only your growth. 7 truths. Each one strips away a lie you've been telling yourself. Each one is a blow to the version of you that's been comfortable staying small. By the end of this, you won't feel better, you'll feel awake, and that's worth more. Truth number 1, the clock is not your friend. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire and buried his own children, wrote himself a private reminder that has outlived him by nearly 2,000 years. He told himself he could leave this life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Not a threat, a filter. He used the certainty of his own death every single day to decide what actually deserved his attention. Most people do the opposite. They treat death like a distant rumor, something that happens to other people, something far enough away that it doesn't need to shape a single decision today. So they waste Tuesday. They waste the whole week. They tell themselves they'll get serious eventually, as if eventually is a place they're guaranteed to arrive. It isn't. Nobody is guaranteed tomorrow. Not you, not the people you love, not the plans sitting untouched in the back of your mind. The brutal truth is that your time is not unlimited, and pretending otherwise is the most expensive lie you'll ever tell yourself. This isn't meant to depress you. It's meant to wake you up. Because once you finally accept that your days are numbered and you don't know the number, something shifts. The excuse of later stops working. You stop scrolling through someone else's highlight reel while your own life sits unopened. You stop waiting for Monday, for January, for some magic version of yourself who finally has it together. Seneca said we don't have a short life, we make it short by wasting most of it. Read that again. He wasn't talking about how many years you get. He was talking about what you do with them. A man who wastes 30 years chasing approval, chasing comfort, chasing distraction, has lived less than a man who spends 5 years fully awake, building, present. So ask yourself something uncomfortable this morning. If you knew for certain that you had 1 year left, what would you stop doing immediately? What conversation would you finally have? What version of yourself would you stop postponing? Sit with that question. Don't rush past it. Most people never ask it, which is exactly why most people die having barely lived. You don't need a terminal diagnosis to start living like your time matters. You need the discipline to remember, on an ordinary day like this one, that ordinary days are the only ones you actually get. There is no bonus round. There is no dress rehearsal happening somewhere else while this life waits. The old Stoics didn't fear death. They used it. They kept it close, not to feel hopeless, but to feel urgent. That urgency is the exact thing missing from most people's lives today. They are comfortable and asleep, coasting through years that will never come back. This is the first truth, because every other truth in this video depends on it. You cannot build discipline. You cannot let go of your excuses. You cannot become who you're capable of becoming until you accept fully that the clock is already running and it does not wait for you to feel ready. 6 more truths are coming, each one harder to hear than the last. Stay with me. The clock is only the first truth. The second one is harder to admit because it does not point at time, it points at you. There was a man named Daniel who ran a small hardware store in a coastal town. One September, a storm rolled in that no forecast had predicted would be this bad. It tore through the harbor, flooded 3 streets, and by morning his store was underwater. Every shelf he built with his own hands was gone. Every dollar he had saved was gone with it. He stood in the doorway the next morning, watching brown water drip from the ceiling tiles, and he felt something break in his chest that had nothing to do with the building. 22 years of work, sitting under 2 feet of seawater. 2 blocks away, another man named Ray owned a similar store. Same storm, same flood, same loss. He stood in his own doorway that same morning, looking at the same kind of ruin, feeling the same kind of grief. Nobody would have blamed him for falling apart. For a few hours, he nearly did. Daniel spent the next year telling anyone who would listen about the unfairness of it. The city should have built better drainage. The insurance company should have paid more. The weather service should have warned him sooner. He wasn't wrong about any of it. But he stayed in that story for years, and the store never reopened. Ray filed his claim, took what little he got, and started rebuilding within a month. Not because the storm was fair to him. It wasn't. Not because he had more resources. He didn't. He rebuilt because he understood something Daniel refused to accept. The storm was never his to control. His response to it always was. That is the second brutal truth. Life is not fair, and waiting for it to become fair is how you lose years you will never get back. You already know this somewhere underneath the noise. You know there are things happening to you right now that you did not choose and cannot undo. A childhood that shaped you in ways you didn't ask for. A betrayal you didn't see coming. A body that doesn't cooperate the way you want it to. A market, a boss, a family situation that never once considered your plans. None of that is your fault. But almost none of it is the point either. You do not need a flooded store to understand this. It might be a job that let you go for reasons that had nothing to do with your effort. A relationship that ended because someone else changed, not you. A diagnosis that showed up uninvited and rearranged everything you had planned. In every one of those moments, there was a piece that belonged to fate and a piece that belonged to you, sitting right next to each other. Most people spend all their strength on the first piece and forget the second one exists. Epictetus was born into slavery. He did not choose that. He was beaten badly enough as a young man that he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. He did not choose that either. And yet, he became one of the most respected teachers in the ancient world because he built his entire philosophy around one blunt distinction. Some things are up to you, and everything else is not. Your body, your money, your reputation, other people's opinions of you, the outcome of your effort. None of that is fully yours to command. Your judgments, your choices, your effort, your response, that is the only territory you actually own. Picture 2 soldiers standing on the same battlefield. One spends his energy cursing the weather, the terrain, the enemy's numbers, the general's orders. The other studies the ground he actually stands on and decides what he can do from exactly where he is. Only one of those men walks away with his mind intact, regardless of how the battle ends. Epictetus taught that the second man was not lucky, he was trained. He had simply stopped fighting wars he could never win in the first place. Most people live their whole lives fighting for territory they were never given, while abandoning the one piece of ground that was always theirs. Think about how much of your energy this week went toward things you cannot change. The traffic, the comment someone made, the decision your company made without asking you, the way your family responded to something you said. You replayed it, argued with it in your head, let it steal your focus for hours. And at the end of all that spending, nothing changed, except you had less left for the one thing that was actually yours to build. This is not an invitation to stop caring. Stoicism was never about numbness. It is an invitation to stop bleeding your energy into places it cannot do anything, so you have enough left for the place where it can do everything. Here is the uncomfortable question. What have you been blaming this month? Be specific, not in a vague way, in the honest way, the way you would answer if no one else could hear it. Now ask yourself what you have actually done about the part that was yours to control. If the honest answer is nothing, you already know why nothing has changed. The man who waits for fairness before he moves will wait forever because fairness was never coming. The man who accepts the unfairness and moves anyway is the one history remembers. Not because his situation was better, because his response was. Stop negotiating with the storm. It cannot hear you, and it does not care. Put your hands back on the only wheel that was ever yours to turn. 5 more truths are waiting, and the next one will take something most people are not ready to give up. Stay with me. Truth number 3. Distraction is not entertainment, it is surrender. Most people think their biggest problem is lack of talent. It isn't. Their biggest problem is that their attention has been stolen. Not in one dramatic moment, but in thousands of tiny ones. A notification here, a quick scroll there, 10 minutes that become an hour, an evening that disappears without a single meaningful thing being built. Imagine a man trying to fill a bucket with water while someone drills tiny holes in the bottom. He works harder and harder, confused about why the bucket never stays full. That's what modern distraction does to your life. It doesn't always destroy your goals directly. It drains the focus required to reach them. The Stoics understood that what you repeatedly give your attention to eventually shapes your character. Marcus Aurelius warned himself not to be distracted by every noise around him, because he knew a scattered mind becomes an easy target for impulse, fear, and comfort. Look around. Entire years are disappearing into consumption. People watch other people build businesses, bodies, skills, and lives, while convincing themselves they are somehow participating just by observing. But watching discipline is not the same as practicing it. Ask yourself an uncomfortable question. What have you consumed this week that actually made you stronger? Not entertained, not temporarily distracted. Stronger, because there is a difference. Entertainment gives you a feeling. Growth gives you a future. One fades by tomorrow, the other compounds for years. Think of your attention like sunlight. When sunlight is scattered, it warms a surface. When it is focused through a lens, it can start a fire. The same is true for your mind. A distracted person may be busy all day and still create nothing. A focused person can change his life in a few consistent hours. Seneca wrote that people guard their property carefully, but waste time freely, even though time is the one thing that can never be replaced. Read that slowly. The money you lose can return. The opportunities you miss may appear again, but the hour that just passed is gone forever. This is why discipline begins with protecting your attention. Not because productivity is everything, because your life is built from whatever repeatedly receives your focus. If your attention goes to outrage, you become reactive. If your attention goes to comparison, you become insecure. If your attention goes to comfort, you become weaker. But if your attention goes to learning, building, training, creating, and serving, something changes. You stop drifting through life and start directing it. Truth number 4. Comfort is slowly making you weak. This truth is harder to hear because comfort rarely feels dangerous. It feels deserved. You work hard, so you relax a little longer. You postpone the workout because you're tired. You avoid the difficult conversation because you want peace. You choose the familiar path because it feels safe. None of these decisions seem catastrophic on their own. That is exactly why they are dangerous. Imagine a sword left unused in a velvet case. It stays clean, it stays protected, and eventually it becomes useless. Human beings are similar. We are built through resistance. Muscles grow by being challenged. Wisdom grows by facing difficulty. Courage grows by acting despite fear. Yet many people spend years arranging their lives to avoid discomfort entirely. They want confidence without risk, strength without struggle, success without failure, and respect without sacrifice. The Stoics would have called that impossible. Epictetus compared life to athletic training. No one becomes stronger by watching others lift the weight. The weight itself is what creates the strength. So when life gives you a difficult task, a setback, a rejection, or a challenge you didn't ask for, don't immediately ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask, "What strength is this demanding from me?" That question changes everything. The obstacle stops looking like punishment and starts looking like training. The breakup may be teaching resilience. The failure may be teaching humility. The uncertainty may be teaching courage. The responsibility may be teaching leadership. None of those lessons feel comfortable while you're learning them, but neither does becoming stronger. And here is the brutal truth most people avoid. If you always choose the easier path, life eventually becomes harder. If you willingly choose some difficulty now, life often becomes easier later. Discipline is difficult today, so regret doesn't become difficult tomorrow. Truth number 5. Your identity is built by repetition. People love dramatic transformations. They imagine one powerful decision changing everything overnight. But real change is usually much quieter. A man does not become disciplined because he feels disciplined once. He becomes disciplined because he repeatedly does what a disciplined person would do. Imagine carving a path through a forest. The first walk is difficult. The second is slightly easier. After enough repetitions, a clear trail appears. Your habits work the same way. Every action is a vote for the person you are becoming. Skip one workout and nothing changes. Skip 50 and you become someone different. Read one page and nothing changes. Read every day for a year and your mind becomes someone else's. Keep one promise to yourself and it seems small. Keep hundreds and you become a person who trusts himself. This is why Marcus Aurelius focused so much on daily conduct. He knew character was not built in grand speeches. It was built in ordinary moments repeated consistently. And that should encourage you, because you do not need a perfect life to begin changing your identity. You need a single action repeated long enough that it becomes part of who you are. Small actions become habits. Habits become character. Character becomes destiny. Most people wait to feel different before they act different. The Stoics would tell you to reverse it. Act different long enough, and eventually you become different. Two truths remain. And the next one is the one that finally separates people who merely admire change from people who actually transform their lives. Truth number 6. Stop chasing approval from people who aren't living your life. There is an invisible prison that traps more people than failure ever will. It has no walls, no locks, no guards standing at the gate, yet millions spend their entire lives inside it. The prison is other people's opinions. Somewhere along the way, without realizing it, you began measuring your worth through someone else's eyes. Maybe it was your parents, maybe your classmates, maybe strangers you've never even met, maybe people online who will forget your name 5 seconds after seeing it. And from that moment on, every decision became a performance. You stopped asking, what kind of person do I want to become? You started asking, what will people think? That single shift quietly steals entire lives. Imagine an eagle raised among chickens. Every day it watches them scratch the ground, never looking toward the sky. After enough years, the eagle forgets it was born to fly. Not because its wings disappeared, because it accepted the limits of the birds around it. Many people live exactly like that, not because they lack ability, because they inherited expectations that were never meant for them. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth, yet he constantly reminded himself that praise and criticism were equally temporary. The same crowd cheering today could be criticizing tomorrow. If your peace depends on public approval, your peace belongs to the public. Think about how exhausting that is. You dress for approval, you speak for approval, you work for approval, you hide your dreams for approval, you silence your voice for approval. And after years of chasing acceptance, you finally receive it, only to realize you've become someone you barely recognize. That is too expensive a price. The Stoics believed your character should be your judge, not the crowd. Because crowds change. Principles do not. History proves this over and over. The people who changed the world were rarely understood in the beginning. They were questioned, ignored, mocked, doubted. Not because they were wrong, because they were different. If they had waited for universal approval, they never would have begun. Ask yourself something difficult. How many decisions have you made simply because they were expected of you? How many opportunities have you avoided because someone might laugh if you failed? How many dreams have remained silent because you feared temporary embarrassment more than permanent regret? Fear of judgment is often nothing more than imagination pretending to be reality. Most people are too busy worrying about themselves to spend much time thinking about you. And those who constantly judge others usually reveal more about themselves than about the people they're criticizing. You cannot build an authentic life while constantly borrowing someone else's expectations. There comes a moment when every person must choose comfort through approval or freedom through authenticity. The first feels safer. The second builds a life you can actually respect. When you stop performing for the audience, something remarkable happens. Your decisions become clearer, your confidence becomes quieter, your energy returns, because you're no longer wasting it maintaining an image that was never real. The strongest people in history weren't fearless. They were simply more committed to their values than to their reputation. That is real freedom. Not having everyone agree with you, but sleeping peacefully because you remained true to yourself. Now we arrive at the final truth, the one every previous lesson has been preparing you for. The truth that determines whether this video becomes another source of temporary motivation or the beginning of a different life. Truth number 7. The person who will change your life is the one staring back from the mirror. Imagine standing at the base of a mountain. Its peak disappears into the clouds. From where you stand, the climb looks impossible. So impossible that many people never take the first step. Instead, they spend years studying the mountain, reading about it, watching others climb it, planning the perfect route, waiting until they feel completely ready. But mountains are never conquered by thought, only by steps, one after another. The person you dream of becoming is not created in one extraordinary day. He is built during ordinary mornings when you choose discipline over excuses. He is built during quiet evenings when no one is watching. He is built every time you keep a promise to yourself after your emotions tell you not to. People often ask when confidence finally arrives. The answer surprises them. Confidence is not what comes before action. Confidence is what action leaves behind. Every courageous decision deposits a small amount into your confidence. Every broken promise makes a withdrawal. Over time, those deposits become identity. This is why the Stoics focused so intensely on daily practice, not because they expected perfection, because they understood momentum. A single brick seems insignificant. Lay one every day, and eventually you've built a house. Plant one seed every season, and eventually you've grown a forest. Honor one commitment every morning, and eventually you've built a character that no setback can easily shake. There will still be difficult days, days when discipline feels heavy, days when progress feels invisible, days when the old version of yourself whispers that nothing is changing. Do not believe that voice. The strongest trees spend years growing roots before anyone notices their height. Your deepest transformations often happen long before they become visible. So when you leave this video, don't promise yourself you'll change your entire life tonight. Promise yourself something smaller, something you can absolutely keep. Wake up when you said you would. Read one chapter. Take the walk. Have the difficult conversation. Finish the work you've been postponing. Protect 1 hour from distraction. Keep one promise, then another, then another. Because your future is not waiting for one heroic moment. It is quietly being shaped by the choices you make before this day ends. One day, years from now, you'll look back at an ordinary morning that seemed completely forgettable, and you'll realize it was the morning everything began to change. Not because life suddenly became easier, because you finally stopped waiting for life to change first. You changed. And once that happened, everything else slowly began to follow. One decision, one habit, one day at a time. That is how great lives are built. Take one last look at the person you've been up until this moment. Not with guilt, not with shame, just with honesty. Because honesty is where every meaningful transformation begins. The version of you that kept waiting, the version that kept making promises only to break them, the version that chose comfort over growth. That person brought you here, but that person does not have to decide where you go next. The Stoics never believed people were trapped by yesterday. They believed people were shaped by what they repeatedly chose today. That's why Marcus Aurelius never wrote reminders for the man he used to be. He wrote them for the man he wanted to become tomorrow morning. Every sunrise gave him another opportunity to practice. Not to be perfect, to be better. That is the difference. Perfection is an illusion. Progress is a decision. Too many people spend years searching for the perfect routine, the perfect plan, the perfect mindset. Meanwhile, someone else begins with imperfect action. Months later, the second person has completely changed their life, while the first is still planning. Remember every truth you've heard today. The clock is already running. Nobody is coming to save you. Your attention is shaping your future. Comfort slowly weakens what challenge strengthens. Your identity is built by repeated actions. Other people's opinions cannot become the blueprint for your life. And finally, the person capable of changing everything has been with you from the beginning. You. Not the version you'll become 5 years from now. Not the version waiting for perfect confidence. The version breathing right now. The version sitting exactly where you are. This moment is more powerful than you realize. History is filled with ordinary mornings that quietly changed extraordinary lives. Nobody watching could tell the difference. There were no dramatic speeches, no music, no audience applauding. Just one decision. One person deciding they were finished negotiating with excuses. Perhaps today becomes that morning for you. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, it won't. Challenges will still arrive. People will still misunderstand you. Plans will still fail. Unexpected problems will still appear. But something inside you can become unshakable. The Stoics understood a secret that many people spend their entire lives missing. Peace does not come from controlling life. It comes from controlling yourself. That is why discipline creates freedom. That is why responsibility creates confidence. That is why courage grows every time you move forward, despite uncertainty. Years from now, your future self will not remember how comfortable today felt. They will remember whether today became the day you finally started. Imagine meeting that future version of yourself. They don't ask how many motivational videos you watched. They don't ask how inspired you felt. They ask only one question. Did you begin? Because beginnings are powerful. One page becomes a book. One workout becomes a stronger body. One difficult conversation repairs a broken relationship. 1 hour of focused work creates an opportunity that changes everything. One promise kept becomes another. And eventually, without realizing it, you've become someone your old self would hardly recognize. That is how real transformation happens. Quietly, patiently, relentlessly. Not through giant leaps. Through consistent steps that almost seem too small to matter, until one day they matter more than anything. So when this video ends, resist the temptation to simply feel motivated. Motivation fades, action remains. Choose one thing, only one. Do it today, finish it, then protect that habit tomorrow and the day after. Let discipline become your identity instead of your temporary emotion. If you stumble, stand again. If you fail, learn. If you hesitate, move anyway. Remember, the oak tree never apologizes for taking years to become mighty. Neither should you. Your pace is not the problem. Stopping is. Keep moving, keep building, keep becoming. Because every sunrise still offers the same question. Will you live intentionally or accidentally? Only you can answer it, and only your actions can prove it. If this message challenged the way you see your own life, don't let it end here. Pass it on to someone who needs to hear these truths today. Sometimes a single conversation can change the direction of an entire life. And if you're committed to building a stronger mind through timeless Stoic wisdom, consider joining the Stoic Origin community by subscribing. Every new lesson is designed to help you think more clearly, act with greater discipline, and become a person who remains steady no matter what life brings. Until our next reflection, protect your time, guard your character, and remember this: your future is never created all at once. It is created by what you choose to do today.